Master your vices: pride, laziness, gluttony, lust, avarice. Since sin entered the world, human beings have been subject to being dominated by these vices. Each and every one of us has them, and we have fallen for them. That is why countless thinkers have spoken about them throughout the history of humanity. Addictions awaken our most irrational side, seduce us, cloud our understanding, and incline our appetite towards the lowest passions that human beings possess. They even overwhelm reason, making us try to convince ourselves that addiction is a good thing, or at least not as bad as one might expect. As you can already see, Stoicism stands out as one of the most critical doctrines in relation to addictions. The Stoics consider that they nullify man's reason and also his freedom, making us similar to animals subjugated to their instincts and desires. Remember that historical philosophy is a tireless cultivation of virtue, which keeps us away from vices and leads us to a full and happy life. As you may have experienced, addiction makes us tremendously unhappy. It seems to satisfy us completely, but this satisfaction is fleeting and temporary. When it disappears, it only leaves suffering, anguish, and unhappiness. It seems that addiction completes and satiates us, but in reality the only thing it does is empty us and leave a wound in the soul that only virtue can heal. Marcus Aurelius said that vice is its own punishment and lies in its own destruction, and Seneca added this: "Vice is the most powerful enemy anyone can face, but virtue is the best defense against it." I will try to help you own yourself, control your addictions, and, ultimately, be more virtuous and happy. To do this, I will divide the video into two parts. First, I will explain what addiction is from a historical perspective. Afterwards, I will give 10 pieces of advice to combat vice through virtue. I ask for your collaboration to sign up to help the channel grow so that I can bring more of the historical philosophy. I count on your help. For historians, addiction is a behavior that is morally incorrect and harmful to the person who commits it. It is an affliction of the soul that inclines toward irrational appetite, distorts judgment, causes suffering, and undermines inner peace. Examples of vices, as we all know, are vanity, anger, fear, lust, avarice, and many others. Marcus Aurelius explains very well what these deviations of the soul consist of and says the following: "The first and greatest vice is ignorance, the second is the lack of high dominance." Firstly, vice is the result of an error in judgment derived from a poor exercise of the virtue of wisdom. When we fall prey to addiction, our understanding takes two alternatives: either it identifies as good what is actually evil, or it recognizes it as evil and tries to convince itself that it is good. In both cases, the result is the same: the understanding becomes curved and expresses the error with the reason curved, giving way to pleasure and desire. One privileges momentary enjoyment to the detriment of true happiness and becomes a prisoner of impulses. By nature, impulses are irrational and selfish, making us more animals than human beings. He who allows himself to be carried away by addiction renounces reason, which is what makes us people, and becomes a slave to his passions. This is characteristic of animals. Therefore, anyone who indulges in addiction denotes a clear lack of love for themselves and humanity. In addition to making us more animals, addiction makes us dependent and manipulable, like slaves to our passions, nullifying our freedom and making us unable to choose between one action or another, prisoners of addiction. Others can do to us what they want. They can easily manipulate us using that deviation that is our weakness. Therefore, Marcus Aurelius says that after the error of ignorance, in vice there is the error of high control. Reason becomes confused, gives way to pleasure, losing all ability to dominate passions and order them towards virtue. Desire and virtue, a historian would say, are incompatible. Therefore, the vices that prioritize desires and remove virtue distance us from both serenity and a happy life, which are the ends to which every human being must orient themselves. However, one should not think that falling into addiction means falling into a reversible error from which we cannot escape. On the contrary, as Seneca said, the best medicine for vice is virtue. That is why, as Stoicism argues, it is so necessary to fight every day to practice virtue. We must fight to be more rational, more serene, little by little renounce vices and achieve self-control. It is a difficult task, but it is what corresponds to an end as grand as true happiness. If obtaining full happiness were simple, it wouldn't have so much value and wouldn't be so extraordinary. When we look at the historical record, we are very likely to agree with all of these ideas. However, you may be wondering, even though I agree with this, what can I practically do to overcome my addictions on a daily basis? Where should I start? This is the question I address in the second part of this video, in which I will share some advice for combating the tyranny of vices and cultivating virtue. The first step is to know yourself, to clearly identify what you are struggling with. We are all aware of the weaknesses and vices that affect our hearts and are the cause of our turmoil and unhappiness, such as greed, lust, and selfishness. Recognizing these addictions and being clear about what you want to combat is essential. Understand that this journey will be long and challenging, as addictions are deeply rooted in our hearts. Along the way, relapses are likely to occur, and this is natural. The important thing is not to give up and always resume the fight to abandon them. With perseverance, you will eventually completely overcome these addictions. To stay motivated, think about the valuable reasons that made you want to quit your addiction. The main reason is to seek a happier life, but each person may have particular reasons, such as saving money, taking care of their health, or improving human relationships. Keep these reasons in mind, especially in the most difficult times, and remember that they are infinitely more valuable than the addictions you are trying to free yourself from. Set realistic, challenging but achievable goals. If you are deeply involved in an addiction, start gradually, setting progressive goals each day, week, or month. Just as ants build a mountain grain by grain, virtue is not achieved overnight, but through constant effort to control vices. Avoid risky situations that could lead you back to addictions. Modifying certain lifestyle habits and changing the environment to avoid temptations may be necessary. Have courage and remember that every sacrifice is worth it. Stay away from those who encourage you to fall into addiction, because whoever leads you to these paths is not seeking your good. Value yourself and others, distancing yourself from those who drag you into addiction, as this harms both of you. Think about the harm addiction does to yourself and others, and remember that addiction sows the path to unhappiness and misfortune. Always seek good and virtue. Controlling addictions is not only a journey of personal improvement, but also a service to society and the world. In short, overcoming vices and cultivating virtue is the path to greatness, wisdom, freedom, and inner peace. To conclude, I share some quotes from historical philosophers about addiction that highlight the importance of overcoming addiction to achieve greatness, wisdom, and inner peace. If you are struggling with addiction, I hope this video helps you understand the harm it causes to you and others. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our updates. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you in the next video.